Alright, let's meet one of the founding fathers of the English novel, Henry Fielding. Born in Somerset in 1707, Fielding had a lively, sometimes chaotic life that reads almost like one of his own stories. He studied at Eton, went off to Leyden to study law, but ran out of money. To stay afloat, he turned to playwriting, and while his plays weren't exactly masterpieces, they gave him his first taste of London literary life. After marrying, Fielding went back to law and was eventually called to the bar. In 1749, he became a Bow Street magistrate, and that job changed everything. Working in the courts exposed him to every shade of human nature, from petty criminals to swindlers, and those insights would later give his fiction its sharp realism and moral depth. Now, Fielding wasn't exactly saintly himself. He lived with a certain zest for pleasure, and it took a toll on his health. Hoping to recover, he set sail for Portugal in 1754, but died in Lisbon soon after, leaving behind a remarkable literary legacy. Let's start with his novels, and don't worry, I'll walk you through them in order, just like the code says. Shame on Andrew and Jonathan Wild, because they blamed the female husband for seducing Tom Jones and Amelia. First comes Shamela 1741. Its full title is An Apology for the Life of Mrs. Shamela Andrews. And yes, that's been asked in exam. It's a cheeky little burlesque written under the pseudonym Mr. Connie Keeber. Fielding wrote it as a direct satire on Samuel Richardson's Pamela, which had idealized virtue and chastity. In Shamela, he flips the idea, turning the innocent maid into a scheming opportunist. Next comes Joseph Andrews 1742. Originally meant as a continuation of Pamela with Joseph as Pamela's brother, it quickly became much more. Fielding defined it as a comic epic poem in prose and even described it as written in imitation of the manner of Cervantes, author of Don Quixote. Both those phrases have been asked in exam, so note them carefully. In Joseph Andrews, we meet Joseph, a kind-hearted footman, and his friend Parson Adams, one of Fielding's most lovable characters. Together, they travel through England, meeting rogues, hypocrites, and good souls alike. The story begins with Lady Booby trying to seduce Joseph, then shifts into a road adventure full of humor, near escapes, and moral lessons. Fielding uses it to explore human nature, especially how people struggle to balance desire and virtue. Then comes Jonathan Wild the Great, 1743, another exam favorite. It's an ironic biography of the real-life underworld figure Jonathan Wild, who was executed in 1725. Fielding turns the story into a savage satire of moral corruption in politics, with Wild symbolizing none other than Britain's first Prime Minister, Robert Walpole. The irony runs deep. Wild is called great, yet every act of his greatness is wicked. Fielding's trick is to show how society confuses success with virtue. Around the same time, he also published A Journey from This World to the Next, a curious philosophical allegory, and a pamphlet called The Female Husband, 1746, based on a real court case about a woman who disguised herself as a man and married another woman, quite scandalous for its time. Then comes the masterpiece, The History of Tom Jones, a Foundling, 1749. This is Fielding at his absolute best, a sprawling, lively, and perfectly constructed novel full of energy, humor, and insight into human motives. Critics call it one of the most symmetrical plots in English fiction, and it's another regular in exam questions. 2 years later, he wrote Amelia, 1751. Here, the tone turns gentler and more personal. Booth, the husband, is modeled on feeling himself flawed but good-hearted, and Amelia, based on his first wife, embodies forgiveness and resilience. The novel has emotional power but lacks the freewheeling vitality of Tom Jones. Fielding's final work, The Voyage to Lisbon, 1754, is part travel diary, part farewell. Even as his health failed, he wrote with warmth and humor, proving his resilience to the very end. What made Fielding so revolutionary was his approach. He moved away from the epistolary form used by Richardson and focused on action, realism, and narrative voice. His prose is bright, observant, and full of moral irony. He understood people, their vanity, their weakness, and their goodness better than almost anyone of his age. So, remember these key points for example. Joseph Andrews began as a satire on Pamela. Fielding called it a comic epic poem in prose. Jonathan Wild satirizes Robert Walpole. Tom Jones is his greatest novel, full of moral insight. Amelia draws on Fielding's personal life, and The Voyage to Lisbon is his final reflective work. Alright, let's talk about one of the greatest novels in English literature, Henry Fielding's The History of Tom Jones, a foundling, published in 1749. It's not just a comic novel, it's also a Bildungsroman, meaning a story of growth and self-discovery, and a picaresque novel filled with adventures, love affairs, and satire. Both these genre labels have been directly asked in exam, so keep them in mind. Interestingly, W. Somerset Maugham, in his book Great Novelists and Their Novels, 1948, listed Tom Jones among the 10 best novels ever written, another exam favorite. Even Coleridge admired it, calling it one of the 3 most perfect plots ever planned, along with Oedipus Tyrannus and The Alchemist. So, who is Tom Jones? He's a foundling, an abandoned baby discovered and raised by the kind-hearted Squire Allworthy, a wealthy country gentleman. The detailed bastard and ward of Squire Allworthy has been asked in exam. Tom grows up generous, impulsive, and full of life, but his charm often lands him in trouble. Tom's rival in both virtue and love is Master Blifil, the hypocritical son of Squire Allworthy's sister, Miss Bridget Allworthy, who later becomes Mrs. Blifil, another key exam name. Blifil is sly and manipulative, always scheming to discredit Tom in Allworthy's eyes. The heart of the story, though, is Tom's love for Sophia Western, the beautiful and virtuous daughter of Squire Western, Allworthy's neighbor. That name, Sophia Western, is a must-remember for exam. Sophia's father, a loud and comical huntsman, insists she marry Blifil for his wealth, but Sophia, true to her name, refuses. She is one of the first truly rounded heroines in English fiction. Around these main figures spin dozens of colorful characters. Lady Bellaston, Tom's seductive and manipulative London lover, Mrs. Honor Blackmore, Sophia's vain and talkative maid, Miss Jenny Jones, later known as Mrs. Waters, wrongly believed to be Tom's mother, Mrs. Partridge, a shrewish woman whose jealousy causes chaos, and Molly Seagrim, Tom's first lover, whose scandalous behavior adds to the novel's mischief. The story takes Tom on a long journey, literally and morally. After being wrongly cast out of Allworthy's house because of Blifil's lies, Tom wanders through England with a good-hearted but foolish Partridge, a former school master. Along the way, he faces temptations, fights, and countless comic adventures. Meanwhile, Sophia flees her father's home to escape the forced marriage with Blifil, and she too ends up in London. In the end, Blifil's deceit is exposed, and Tom's true birth is revealed. He is actually Allworthy's nephew, the son of his sister Bridget. That revelation restores Tom's honor and inheritance. Sophia forgives him for his earlier romantic escapades, and the novel closes with reconciliation, moral reflection, and marriage, a classic Fielding ending where everything resolves neatly. So, Tom Jones is comic, moral, and deeply human. It's both a satire of society and a warm portrait of human imperfection. Remember, Fielding uses omniscient narration, witty commentary, and carefully constructed moral lessons. That's what makes the book one of the finest examples of 18th century fiction. Fielding also published A Journey from This World to the Next in the same year, a lesser known but fascinating work. It's part allegory, part satire, where the narrator travels through the afterlife, meeting famous historical and mythical figures. Through these encounters, Fielding explores morality, justice, and the vanity of human ambition. And finally, Amelia, published in 1751, Fielding's fourth and final novel. This one shifts tone completely. It's not picaresque or comic like Tom Jones, but sentimental, focusing on virtue, marriage, and suffering. It follows the life of Amelia and her husband, Captain William Booth, after their marriage, portraying their financial struggles, temptations, and moral endurance. Fielding wrote Amelia when his own health was failing, and it feels more serious, more moral. Some critics even see it as a bridge between the realism of Defoe and the domestic sentiment of Richardson. So, to sum up, Tom Jones' comic, picaresque, and moral, one of the best planned plots in literature. A journey from this world to the next, allegorical and philosophical. Amelia, sentimental and reflective, his last major work. Together, they show Fielding's range from humor to human sympathy and his place as one of the founders of the English novel.